none of us live into everything that we know. And the challenge of allowing yourself to take the risk of leveraging what you know is one of the greatest challenges that we have.
Welcome to the Crucible Project Podcast. The Crucible Project is a nonprofit organization committed to creating a world of men and women who live with integrity, grace, and courage, helping them to fulfill their God-given purpose. This podcast will discuss important and sometimes difficult topics while delivering practical life applications with men and women who are currently practicing this work. We are igniting Christ-like change in men and women through experiences of radical honesty and grace.
Welcome back to the Crucible Podcast. I am Joy Dunning, and I'm your host today. I'm here with Dan Bouchelle, President and CEO of Mission Resource Network, or MRN, and we're going to learn more about his story, his Crucible journey, his leadership insights, and the work that he's doing with MRN. Hey, Dan, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing, Joy?
Good. Can you tell us just a little bit about who you are?
Oh, man, that's a complex question. I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm a third-generation minister who has a son in ministry. I have been married for nearly 37 years. I have 3 adult children, 2 grandchildren. I was a preacher, pastor for 22 years, and for the last 14 years, I've been with MRN. And I have a lot of identities, most of which sound way more important than they are.
Well, it's so nice to be with you today. Thanks for joining us. So let's jump into what brought you to Crucible. How did you find out about the Crucible Project, and when did you do your initial retreat?
I don't know when I first started hearing about Crucible, but I'd been hearing about it for years. I'd known quite a few people who had gone through it, spoke very highly of it. When I came to MRN 14 years ago, one of our coworkers, Jay Jarbo, was a big fan of Crucible. There'd been other people on our staff who had been, some of our partners, some of our donors who I respected a lot had been. So I'd heard a lot of great things about it. It's one of those things that's like, I should do that one day. And so finally got around to doing it.
Good. Let's talk about your retreat experience. Some people come because they're in crisis mode and are hoping to finally find something to bring relief. And some people come because they know the value of paying attention to how they show up in the world and how that impacts others and themselves. So I'm hoping you can share with us what life was like for you when you went on your retreat and what you got out of it.
Sure. I went in 2018. It was part of a sabbatical experience for me. One of our policies is that after 7 years, we want all of our employees to take a sabbatical and to really focus on personal growth and development, to grow in self-awareness, to just grow deeper so that they're serving out of fullness instead of just running on fumes. And so when I was looking for options for ways that I could just grow as an individual, it's like, well, this is something I've been wanting to do forever. I've heard great things about it. And so I found a time that fit in my sabbatical, and I had to fly to Chicago because that's the one that fit. It was a really powerful experience. And I have to tell you, I really didn't expect it to be as powerful as it was because I guess I was naive or arrogant or a combination of the both. So I have an undergraduate degree in psychology. I have 3 graduate degrees in ministry and theology. And in that process, there was a lot of training in terms of counseling for church leaders and various things to equip you in pastoral ministry. I had taken lots of personality assessments and tools that are designed to help with self-awareness. And I thought, this is an area where I have some ability, some experience. And so, I went in thinking this would be helpful, but not expecting it to be as powerful as it was. I was really grateful afterwards because it came at a time when I won't say I was in crisis, but our organization really needed to go through some significant adaptation because the world around us had changed and the context in which we work had changed. I needed to adapt the way I was leading because of that. And there were some internal obstacles in my life that I needed a breakthrough on. And there are ways I needed to see myself that I was just not able to see. And going there really helped me get unstuck, and it helped me discover things about myself that I needed to let go and some things about myself that I needed to embrace. That was really, really helpful. And I got to tell you, I went into the event, I was angry till there was a moment at which things flipped over and I'm like, okay, now I understand what's going on. Now I see what is happening. And it really revealed to me to what degree I operated out of a sense of pride and control, and that I really needed to let that go. And there were a variety of things that I came to an awareness of. I was like, oh man, I don't want to know that about myself, but that really is true. And so it was a deeper experience. It was a more profound experience than I anticipated. So I was very grateful, and it came at a really good time, and it prepared me to make some big changes within myself and within an organization that got us unstuck. stuff as we move forward. So I feel like I came out a healthier and more whole person in Christ and just as a human being than I went into it.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I hear that when you went, it was a pivotal time for your organization, and it gave you a chance as a leader to take ownership and take a look at what about you contributes to the way your organization is operating. Let's talk about some of those leadership shifts or leadership truths that you unpacked for yourself at the retreat.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't characterize them as leadership truths, but as personal truths about me that impacted the way that I function in the world, including my leadership. And I say it that way because it's not like I learned new content. It's that I had to develop new capacities to live into what I knew. I believed in the importance of vulnerability. I believed in the importance of teamwork. I believed in the importance of self-awareness. I just didn't have the emotional capacity to really live into that the way that I needed to. And emotionally, I needed the validation of being in charge, leveraging expertise, proving myself to my coworkers. I work with really gifted, talented, experienced people. Everybody who works for us is a leader and a developer of leaders. It's part of what we do as an organization because we're a leadership development organization. And so it's an intimidating group of people. It's a really smart group of people. And I'm supposed to be the president. I'm the leader, right? And so rhetorically, I believed in vulnerability and I believed that I didn't have to be the smartest person in the room. But I found that I had a really hard time not proving myself, not having the final word, not commenting in things that I don't need to comment, just being on the side and not being in the mix or in the front. And it wasn't that I didn't know better. I didn't have the emotional capacity to manage myself to do what I knew. And I didn't realize the degree to which I was really still crawling up onto the stage or inserting myself in ways that were not helpful for other people. And so through the experience of the week, I began to see some ways that I was not functioning well and how that was coming from my fears, my insecurities. And I began to see that there was a softer, more gentle, more loving side of myself that I had been ashamed of when I was growing up because it didn't seem manly. Without getting too much into my personal story, there was some hurt in my life that I hadn't really worked through that kept me from being a more kind, gracious, softer presence, and that I needed to welcome that. And it wasn't that I needed to change everything about who I was, but I needed to trust parts of who God created me to be that I was afraid of and a little ashamed of. And I didn't have to exert other parts of myself that I had always relied on so that I knew how to be in different situations better, and I didn't rely on my go-to strengths all the time in ways that kind of block the opportunity of other people to really shine or thrive or lead. And that sounds really, really abstract, and so I'm sorry for that, but hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, that's really powerful. It's amazing how our fears and insecurities can slowly and so discreetly creep up on us, and how if we don't take the time to really look at them and understand them, they find ways to come out sideways and impact our leadership, our relationships, our presence in the world without us even realizing it. As you talk about your work with Mission Resource Network, I know you mentioned it's a leadership development organization and a missions organization. For someone listening who's unfamiliar with MRN, can you tell us more about what you do?
Yeah, we're a missions agency, but we're an unusual missions agency because we don't employ the workers in other countries, unless they are our staff. But we shy away from the word missionary because the word missionary comes with a lot of really negative associations that have to do with colonization and imperialism and the combination of exporting culture and economics and politics as well as with the gospel. The word missionary can get you killed in other countries because of all of that. So we really like to talk about workers, gospel workers, kingdom workers, things of that nature. But what makes us unique is that we are not a sending agency. So when we train people, they're not our employees. They're actually sent by churches. And we really are focused on the role of the local church in the mission of God, whether it's an American church or whether it's an international church, that we want to stay alongside of the church and let the church own its own mission responsibility. And so we recruit and train workers leaders, but we then also help connect them to churches who become their spiritual community and who become their sending organization. And then we train and equip that church to know how to send well. Then we connect those churches into a partnership to really advance something globally. So we're a leadership development and networking agency that comes alongside. And so we train people to go into areas where there are unreached people groups, where, it's less than 2% Christian, or in parts of the world where the church is already established. We work with inside leaders. We don't want to bring teams in to plant new churches. We want to work with inside leaders where we're invited in to help them be stronger, healthier, and to adapt their models in ways that are more contextually appropriate. And then we do lots and lots of equipping with churches to help them understand their role. And we do lots and lots of care for workers, pre-field, on-field, and as they return. And so we say our mission is to multiply healthy leaders to disciple the unreached and underserved people groups of the world. We don't really connect with the entire churches. We're interacting with leaders all the time. And when we're at our best, we kind of stay in the background because we're trying to really put in the focus the leaders, whether they're in churches on this side or on the other side of some geographical boundary, to really take ownership and thrive in the way that God's called them to serve the kingdom.
Yeah. So I heard you mention about how your Crucible experience helped you get unstuck in some certain ways. Can you tell us some of your experience with working with leaders who are feeling stuck?
Yeah, there are different kinds of stuckness. I would say in terms of leadership, if they have come from the West or they have been greatly impacted by the West, which is most of the Christian world, we have an obsession with skills and information, and we don't do a good job of forming people spiritually and emotionally. So we're obsessed with strategy and techniques and skills. That's not usually where things break down, and that's not where the power is. And so if you have unformed people who are leveraging skills, but they are not themselves healthy, then they will contaminate everything they touch, or they will break down with the pressure of trying to do something that's beyond their capacity. And kingdom work is beyond our capacity. If we're not joining something that God is leading, then we're trying to manufacture something, and we're creating Ishmaels, not Isaacs, in the world. And Ishmaels come back to haunt you. And so what we find with global leaders is that they have typically been given a lot of education, and they've been given a lot of things to memorize, and they've been taught how to do things. But the way they've been taught to do them is the Western way of doing things. And they have taken an American model of church, an American model of leadership, which is highly secularized, very skills and information oriented, not very spiritually rounded out, not paying much attention to the spiritual or emotional formation. And then they're put under high pressure circumstances, and they have to do it in a way that doesn't fit their context very well in order to keep getting the money and support from the West. Well, the two big things that they need is the spiritual formation to really understand who they are and to develop and nourish and care for their own soul, because that's usually not something that they were given even permission to or skills to do. And then secondly, they need to have the permission to contextualize the gospel in their setting in ways that make sense for their culture instead of making it look like something out of the West. And they need to realize that they can read the Bible from the lenses of their own culture instead of having to borrow the way that it's been done from the West and making it look like us. A lot of times they don't feel free to do that, or they're going to face tremendous opposition when they do that, or loss of funding when they do that. And so we're looking for those high capacity leaders who've run into the limitations of the systems that they're in, and they've run into the limitations of themselves, and they can see there's something beyond, and they want help doing that. But we don't come in and fix them. We're not arrogant enough to think we can do that, hopefully. What we do is we come in along beside them and ask good questions and coach them and encourage them to follow the promptings of the Spirit and to grow in their capacity so they become the kind of leader, the kind of disciple that's worth replicating. And they live out of a deeper understanding and walk with God. And then they have the confidence to really innovate and contextualize the gospel in their setting in ways that make sense in that culture and can be more powerful, be more durable, be more replicable, instead of trying to make it look like it's something out of the West and the church from the West. And to do that on local resources instead of foreign resources so that it has the capacity to replicate in that country and isn't always dependent on outside leadership funding models and things of that nature. And so that's really challenging work. We only go where we're invited, and we're working with people who have the capacity to lead other people. And we found that Crucible has been incredibly useful in that context. And so at times we have worked with Crucible to put on events in those countries, to invite those people to experiences with Crucible, because it's a ready-made process that we know we can trust to help produce. And frankly, most of the world has nothing like it. And so we love what we see with Crucible, not only for what it's done for us, what we see it has the capacity to do in other countries, in other cultures.
So Crucible and MRN formed a partnership that supports soul work and global missions, and I love how you described the ways to grow. My pastor has a phrase that he repeats that has stuck with me. It's not about information, and it's not about inspiration. It's all about transformation. So Dan, can you share with us a story or some transformation that you've had a chance to witness, seeing Crucible practices being used in other countries?
Jay Jarborough, who works on our staff, has worked to get some really influential leaders from Southern Africa involved in a Crucible weekend that was held on the continent. And one of those is a good friend of mine. He's close to our ministry. And his quote to me after that was, "At the Crucible Project, I've met myself for the first time." And he had a transformational experience of seeing himself from the outside and recognizing himself in a way that he hadn't before. And that's really, really powerful. And that self-awareness is one of the key building blocks of healthy leadership. Knowing what it's like to be on the other side of you, knowing what people deal with when they deal with you, so you know how to manage yourself and not overfunction. And most leaders sabotage their own work because they don't understand the impact of their presence. And Crucible expands your capacity to understand yourself and also the impact you're having on other people, because it expands your awareness of your presence in the world, and you're able to manage yourself better. Now, what you do with that after that experience is a whole nother thing, right? But it gives you the opportunity to meet yourself or see yourself, and then you're in a better position to manage yourself if you handle what you have learned well. And those kinds of experiences, frankly, are just very, very rare in much of the world, and they're not very common, even in the United States or other Western countries where we have endless lectureships and workshops and leader training experiences. Still, self-awareness is not that common. And most leaders sabotage themselves, sabotage their work toward the end, don't finish well, all because of not really understanding their own fears and insecurities and not being able to manage themselves very well.
Yeah, one of the most terrifying but insightful questions a leader can ask those around them is, how do you experience me? And part of that is creating a culture where the people you ask have the freedom to give you the response, not necessarily that you want, but the response that you need.
Yeah, one of the things that I did after Crucible was I interview all of our staff members at least once a year, all those that work in our office, and I have a series of questions they answer me. And a lot of them have to do with their work and their role in their department. But I always ask a couple of questions have to do with me. And I change the way I word it every year so I get a little different answer. But one year it was, what's it like to be on the other side of me? Another is, what do you know about me that I don't know about me, but I should? Or what makes it hard to follow me? What makes it easy to follow me? I have learned really unpleasant things about myself. But that has really helped me to be a better presence. And I don't think I would have done that had it not been for experiences like the Crucible Project, where you come out of that with greater capacity to be vulnerable and to live into vulnerability, because none of us live into everything that we know. We know better than we do. And the challenge of allowing yourself to take the risk of leveraging what you know is one of the greatest challenges that we have, because we can all talk about the game better than we can play the game.
Wow. We know better than we do. And your challenge of allowing yourself to take the risk of leveraging what you know to do something different, that is a challenge right there. And that got me. That's so good. So as we enter that challenge, Crucible is a great resource for that. I have found that to be true for myself, but I'm wondering if you have other resources you would recommend too for our listeners who want to take up that challenge.
I'm a big believer in using a variety of tools that help you develop self-awareness. And so my fear is that my caution is that people fall in love with tools and they think that some tool is, the gold standard, or this is the I Ching, this is the thing that's going to be the deal breaker, or the whatever whatever the thing is going to get you unstuck. And there are a lot of people who, whether it's a walk to Emmaus or Enneagram or some other experience, God has a way of giving us Bethel moments, like Jacob, who falls asleep and he has this vision at Bethel, and he wakes up, and instead of saying, what an awesome God, he says, what an awesome place. And he thinks there's something special about this place, and he wants to hallow this ground instead of the God who met him there. And so Crucible is a Bethel place, but it's not about Crucible. It's about the God you meet there and what you see. But there are lots of experiences that can do that. And so whether it's, like I said, like it's a walk to Emmaus, or whether it is a tool like an Enneagram, or whether it's a book or a process, there are a lot of things out there that can help you develop self-awareness. And I don't think any one of them necessarily is more than what it is. It's just a tool, but that tool puts you in a position to encounter something. And your faith is in the God that meets you there, not in the tool. So I think we need to be relentlessly pursuing opportunities for self-awareness growth as leaders, because the greatest tool you have is your own self. The only thing you control is you. And the most loving thing you can do is bring the best version of you into every experience that other people have with you. And if you're not attending to yourself, if you're not aware of yourself, if you're not managing yourself, then you are not serving other people well. And so personal growth, self-awareness training, formative experiences, yes, it requires you to go off by yourself, but it's not for you. It's so that you show up as a better version of you, to be a better lover, servant, equipper, helper to other people. And if you love other people and you care about your impact in the world, you're going to be attending to yourself. Now, toward that end, I'm a big believer in the importance of spiritual formation, contemplative spirituality. There are a lot of great books out there. I love Mark Thibodeau's book, Armchair Mystic. I like Thomas Merton. There are a whole number of really excellent spiritual fathers, contemplative writers. And I think most of us are too focused on making an impact now instead of developing our capacity to hear and be with God. And we need to learn about desert experiences. We need to learn about meeting God in the quiet, in the stillness. And so having a contemplative prayer practice, reading things that develop us from that perspective are really, really important. And in the long run, that's way more important than skills and strategy. Skills and strategy are great on top of a healthy self, but they will never replace a healthy self. And so the Crucible is a really intense experience that puts a lot of that kind of thing into a weekend. And like I said, if you come at it with the right attitude, there is a lot of opportunity for you. But it's not the only or the exclusive one, but it's a really great one. And so I'm incredibly grateful for the experience. But it's just another layer in a lifetime of learning and growth, of learning to die to yourself and discover who God created you to be. And we never graduate from that.
That is true. It's very true. The last thing I want to touch on briefly is leadership in the next generation. In your position, you see leadership across a broad spectrum of ages, cultures, and countries. And I'm curious if you can share some insights on the challenges or triumphs of some of these generational leadership shifts.
Wow, that's a really big question. I will say that most leaders that I see who struggle to end well or to empower others are needing validation. They're afraid to not be needed. They're afraid to not be essential. They're afraid when they're no longer performing, when they no longer have the title, when they no longer have the position, that they will no longer be anything that matters. And so they cling too long to their position, and they unintentionally sabotage the people around them, because instead of being the fruit of their work that they want to grow, they become threats to their own significance. And if you do not find your significance in your relationship with God, and instead of your activity, then you will actually sabotage the good work of your ministry or your life, seeking a validation that you're never going to get, because you can never get enough validation from product. Your identity has to be secure in God, and you have to go into every encounter knowing I'm enough no matter what happens from this. I get my validation from God, which means I can go into this experience, to this moment, to this relationship, not to seek my own validation, but to really be present to serve and lift up other people. And I don't do that well all the time. I'd like to think I'm doing it better a higher percentage of the time. But overcoming our own insecurity is a huge thing. And you can see that throughout the Bible. You can see that in leaders, that you're going to lose your capacities and you're going to lose your position and you're going to have to surrender your role and your platform. And if you can do that with joy and look forward to other people succeeding and retreating to the background and not be less because you are all you need to be in God, then you can serve well. But if you have to get that constant validation, if you're chasing that up and to the right validation or that I still have it validation, you're going to sabotage everything that you have been working for in small or large ways. And so if you're not able to understand your own soul and what's happening there very well, you're a threat to yourself and everything you care about. And so whether it's Crucible or something else, do everybody around you a favor, including yourself, and invest in your own personal growth and your own self-awareness and your own soul care. Because not only will you be more content, will you find more joy, will you find more meaning in life, but everybody around you will be stronger and healthier because of it. And they won't know why, and that won't matter.
Really wise words. And I appreciate the insight that you have to share from your perspective, from your platform, and to hear a leader in the faith community saying, get to know yourself, get to know your soul, find your validation in your creator, and take the time to invest in that is really encouraging. So thank you, Dan, for your time today. Thank you for your thoughts. And before I let you go, anything else that you want to share?
No, I'm grateful. I probably don't belong on this platform anyway, but I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. And I will say I'm the kind of personality that is frequently mistaken but never in doubt. And so I speak with a lot of conviction, but I'm pretty flawed and I've got a lot of blind spots. And so take whatever I say with a pinch of salt, and hopefully there's something there of value for you.
Oh my goodness. It's been so encouraging for me. I feel like I found probably 15 different things that I want to go back and write down later. So thank you for your time and blessings to you and your ministry.
Absolutely. It's great to be with you. And thank you for what you do.
For more information about our weekends, please go to thecrucibleproject.org. Or if you're ready to get started on your transformational journey right now, you can connect with one of our Crucible certified coaches for a free 30-minute session at thecrucibleproject.org/coaching. That's thecrucibleproject.org/coaching. If you like what you heard, connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Rate and review wherever you are listening. And don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. Thank you for listening.